then again, that was just after. Again, it was probably a day. I think I was at my wife's work, because we'd actually just been married in 2001 as well in June. Yeah. We'd only just moved into our house, and when did we move into the house? End of November or beginning of November? Yeah, no, beginning of November. And then we actually moved. We were like done the house up a little bit, and then I think it was around about the 16th of December that actually was, well, we signed on the 16th, so the 15th of December it must have been. Sitting there working, had a phone call from Paul Gill, the manager, saying obviously I'd spoke to your club, they've agreed a fee, wanting you to come and sign for Wigan. And I was drove down Thursday night, signed on the Friday, and played against Oldham on the Saturday. So that shows you how things kind of move on, and really very, very quick, really.
That would not happen these days. The other health and safety protocols and stuff.
No, and that was just again when I was at Oldham, old school ground. The stadium was, lucky if it was obviously two bits hanging together, but the atmosphere, and it just felt as if, wow, this is incredible. This is kind of, and I'd played obviously against Kilmarnock, Rangers, Celtic, so I'd played on obviously big games, but something just felt a little bit different when I went down to Oldham, as if they felt, oh yeah, this is where obviously I want to be, like down south, and obviously testing yourself down there. And this was League One at the time. It's not as if this was obviously in the Championship or in the Premier League. This was League One, but it just felt as if, yeah, there was something proper about it.
So, as I just said about United, proper old school football. You obviously went down to League One with Wigan Athletic. That was similar with the old school football, wasn't it? It was. How did you find it with the transition of moving all your life in Scotland, going down to England? Was it a different style of football? As people say, was it less physical, more tactical?
No, probably the opposite. In regards to the physicality of the players, everyone seemed bigger and stronger, especially obviously in League One. The pace, tempo of the game as well was obviously very quick. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I kind of noticed, was players were bigger, stronger, quicker, and obviously that's another challenge that you had to go and adapt with. But no, everything when I went down to Wigan was kind of the infrastructure that Wigan already had, out with the fact that we've got a lovely training ground now, but the stadium was there, the ambition was there from like Dave Whelan, who was the chairman at the time, obviously kind of get laughed out of town when he said, well, when he bought the club, saying obviously I'll have everything in place for this club to be in the Premier League. Within 10 years, and I think they managed to do it in 7. So it shows you again that collective of the group and the ambition and young hungry players, young manager getting back to obviously a chairman, then that whole culture, you see, is what obviously, well, for me, that's obviously the culture that Paul Gill created with the players he signed and the way we went about our business. Of just kind of sheer hard work, good players, but obviously working hard. I think that's obviously what got us the success in the end of winning. Obviously, the first season I went down there, we finished mid-table, just kind of bang average. But that following season, after he made a few more acquisitions, got rid of obviously a few players that obviously didn't fit into the way he wanted to do things, he built a new team, and yeah, I think we won League One with 106 points or something like that, which at that point was obviously at that point, I still don't make still be, but at that point it was certainly obviously a record for that division. And then just kind of carried that momentum into the championship, which again, obviously, huge step up. But again, just because obviously that environment that we created, and just kind of that mentality where we felt as if we could win every game winning. We were well prepared, obviously tactically, but we were a very, very fit team. So we were. A lot of the time, training was really high tempo, high intensity, so you were kind of playing under that pressure, enough every day to move the ball quickly, find spaces. So yeah, we managed to get all the way up nearly in that first season in the Championship to get promoted. We just failed on the last, again, you say failed, probably fail's the wrong word, considering you'd just been obviously promoted for League One, and we just missed it on the playoffs. We actually had to beat West Ham on the last day of the season, and we ended up drawing one each. So we finished, I think, 7th, obviously, that season. Just kind of regrouped. Again, some players came in, some players left. And then that following season, which had been obviously our second season in the Championship, we managed to get promoted in second place. And I say it was a lot of to and fro right throughout the whole season. I think myself, Ipswich and Sunderland were kind of the three kind of vying for those two places, and it came down to the last game of the season. I think Ipswich were away to Brighton and we went home to Reading. Sunderland went up automatically, and we managed to beat Reading 3-0 at home, and as I say, it was us promoted into the Premier League, which again was just unbelievable.
Hope you scored on the last day of the game to contribute.
No, I don't think I did. Jason Roberts, Nathan Ellington, and I think Lee McCulloch, actually. Yeah. I think that was the 3 goal scorers for that day. So, yeah.
So, you've just mentioned you get promoted to the Premier League. How big was that step up to, as many would probably call it, the most expensive and the biggest league in the world? And it's just after, well, it's not even a decade into the transition into the Premier League. Do you know?
No.
How big was that step up?
I think excitement and everything else, because you always wanted to be involved. I say as a kid, you always used to watch Match of the Day. You always then watch the Premier League in Sky, and I say that was always your goal, to try and obviously get into the Premier League or try and play at a higher level as you possibly can. And I say by hard work and determination and resilience and just kind of perseverance of getting through good times, bad times, then say you managed to obviously find yourself there, which again, I think it was 27 at that point, and you were just kind of, again, just taking everything in your stride. And I remember, I always used to work hard pre-season before I went back in training. They say I used to give myself maybe 2 weeks or so before we actually started back for pre-season. But I remember obviously giving it a little bit extra that pre-season to try and obviously make sure you were in tip-top shape, because you knew the club were going to be signing obviously new players. And actually, I was at a contract at the end of the season, so you probably had that a little bit in the back of your mind, but you just felt as if no, everything will be fine. Yeah. And again, probably not thinking about it too much. But I say I managed to sign a 2-year kind of contract extension at that time as well. So that was obviously fantastic. And I think obviously that gave you a little bit extra motivation to try and push yourself in regards to say, right, we're going into the Premier League. The club obviously believe in you in regards to give you that opportunity, even though you'd obviously been involved, you just never know in football. So the fact obviously give you that contract, again, worked that little bit harder pre-season, knowing that you're going into the Premier League. And I say everything about Premier League football is just the whole build up to games, the atmosphere, it just seems totally different in regards to every other game that you play. There just always seems as if there's just this buzz and hype about no matter what game it is. And I say, I know when you watch it, because you do it yourself now as well, even when it's games, and we were certainly, a lot of the games we were involved as if, like Wigan, very, very low-key games. But when we obviously played and the build up to it, used to arrive into the game, whether it was on TV or not on TV, it was still actually just a different atmosphere. There just seemed to be this whole buzz about everything, which was fantastic. And I liked the fact that we played when the fixtures came out, because again, you were sitting waiting, thinking, right, who's your first game going to be against? And who that happened to be against? Jose Mourinho and Chelsea. Which again, you probably couldn't have scripted. You couldn't have scripted in terms of obviously who you would have been playing. So again, that was just unbelievable to think you're going to go and play Chelsea in the first game of the season. And I think that's what probably gave us the kind of belief and confidence, even though we had that, because we say when you breed the culture that we had, and it's kind of that hard work, that team spirit and everything that we got to kind of progresses on over like the seasons prior, to continue that, we still had that confidence, but obviously knowing you're going up against obviously a lot better quality in terms of what the opposition are. But I say we were a good side ourselves, but I say when you come up against Chelsea, and on that opening day of the season, we should have beat Chelsea. As I say, we were by far the better team. We had numerous chances, and then Hernan Crespo decides to pick the ball up on the right-hand side, cut inside in the last minute, and just absolutely drill one right into the postie stamp in the top corner to get beat 1-0. But that's what the Premier League does to you, because you can be in games, but you've got these players that are world-class players that can just produce a moment of magic out of absolutely nothing. But even though we got beaten that game, that probably just was a massive confidence booster to everyone associated with it, just thinking, hopefully we can go and compete at this level. And again, we just managed to ride that crest of a wave. At one point, we were sitting top of the league, and then we were running about as if like the top 3 places for, I think it was up to, let's say, Christmas time or so. And then over the course of the season, or end of the season, we finished 9th, I think it was. So first season 9th, and we managed to make it to the Carling Cup final against Man United at Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. So again, it was just momentum, confidence, and see when you're doing that and you've got a good manager, you've got a good bunch of players, and everybody's in it together and working hard, then it just shows you obviously where it can take you. So that was a fantastic, obviously, first season in the Premier League, and then obviously stayed there for, I think it was another 7 or 8 years, maybe, Wigan as a club. So yeah, it was fantastic times. Yeah, so again, I was, after that kind of 2 years at Wigan playing in the Premier League, and that was me coming up for, I think it was 7 years. My manager pulled you at the time again, so my contract was coming to an end, and I think we played Portsmouth away, and April we just were going off the bus, said obviously come and see me, we're looking to kind of go and extend your contract, which again was fantastic. But during that time, I think we had a few games or whatever involved, we never really kind of get round to it. And then Derby came in for me. Obviously Derby were flying high in the Championship at the time, with Billy Davies looking as if they were going to get promoted. And at first the club turned it down. They said they'd made a bid for it, because I was out of contract in the summer, but they made a bid, and I think the club had turned it down, and then said obviously you're not going off your contract. But then we kind of spoke about it a bit more, and they said, well, it's entirely up to you. You've been great for us. If you want to go, then obviously you could go. So I thought, yeah, obviously I'd been here for 7 years. Derby, in terms of the size of the club and everything about it, historically, I thought, yeah, fantastic. I'd love to go and play for Derby, Billy Davies being the manager. So yeah, I ended up signing for Derby in January of 2008.
Yeah. And you felt Billy Davies would understand you more as a manager? Obviously, you had your time with Paul Jewell, and that was definitely successful, but how did you feel with knowing that Billy Davies would be in charge? Do you think it would be a good difference?
Yeah, I thought in terms of obviously being Scottish manager, and obviously his teams were always really, really competitive. When he was at Preston, and for whatever reason, when we played against Preston when I was at Wigan, we always done really, really well. And I always done really, really well. Always scored, set up a number of goals. We had some big victories against Preston, considered it was a local derby. So I've always liked, obviously, the way Billy came across and obviously spoke about things. But it was, as much as Billy, it was probably the size of Derby as a club in terms of historically, the support they had, the stadium they had. Because obviously I played there a number of times with Wigan as well. And it just again seemed to me as if just that kind of, to play in front of that, near enough, was it 35,000 or something at Pride Park week in, week out, because you had a good support base, whereas obviously Wigan first season was great, but then attendances started to obviously dwindle a little bit in regards to that. So I just felt as if to go to Derby, then it was a kind of, not a step up in terms of the club or opposition or whatever that, but just in terms of that kind of atmosphere, week in, week out, the expectation levels, then, and again,
Pressure.
something different. Something different because I'd been at Wigan for 7 years. So yeah, that's why I obviously decided to leave and go to Derby.
Yeah. So in terms of, you had 3 spells in England. You had Sheffield Wednesday after that. Well, you can talk about Sheffield Wednesday if you want, and then we'll talk about your preference between the 3. So how did you get on with Sheffield Wednesday then after Derby?
Well, I'll say Derby. I'll a wee bit elaborate, a wee bit more.
Talk a wee bit about Derby first. Sorry,
Derby, because Derby again, team of flying, always seemed to be something that was kind of niggling away in the background, whether it be the owners, the majority of owners that were in there at the time, and somebody's buying somebody out of there. So, and it always seems to be kind of hanging over us. And even at that time, it was the same, getting promoted up to the Premier League, and which, say, we were in. I think we were in automatic positions. We fell out of that because we had a wee sticky spell, went to the playoffs, but we obviously managed to get up in the playoffs, beating Southampton and then beating West Brom. But when you think of the job that Billy done, and at the start of that season, they say the difference is with Wigan, we were like 7 years in the making or so. 4 years in the making or so before we went from League One up to the Premier League. Whereas Billy kind of went in the summer of that year and managed to get the team promoted. So it was totally different circumstances in regards to how it obviously transpired. And unfortunately, when we went up, we were just never ever equipped to go up and play in the Premier League. Even remember after getting promoted, there was obviously saying, was Billy going to be staying as a manager, because there was a bit of kind of contract kind of wrangles between him, and again at the board level there was different. So everything about it, I don't know what it was. It just, again, you had that excitement, that buzz. Not saying it was any different at that time, but when you look back, there was just so many kind of extenuating circumstances in the background that probably, we weren't probably set up, probably didn't have a good enough squad, didn't have maybe a good enough players collectively, singly, obviously myself and the rest, but obviously we just weren't good enough at that time to obviously stay in the league, and it was really disappointing, the fact, obviously, the way it transpired that season. And it wasn't even the fact as if every game, yes, you obviously get hiding in a couple of the games, but even at Wigan we get hiding in a couple of the games, which against the bigger teams, anybody, that can happen to any club, no matter who you are. Look at obviously Man United playing Liverpool, even in this day and age. So these things can happen because of the quality, but a lot of the games where it was competitive, and we would just say it would be a silly mistake and you would lose by the odd goal, or certain games where you would think, could you go and win, you'd miss a penalty and then the teams would go up. I always remember once we played Liverpool Boxing Day, we'd missed a penalty, and then I think Steven Gerrard actually, then kind of up there at the end, near the end of the game, and scores. Liverpool beat you 1-0 or 2-1, I think it was. So there was so many things that again kind of transpired against us that season, and we just kind of went out without a whimper, which again was really, really disappointing at that time. And then like the fans, obviously disappointed with that as well. And even with personally myself, and you say you take, as I say, you've got to be kind of strong, resilient, but you say some obviously times as well, like fans are on your back and things like that. And I'm a big believer as if, yes, fans are entitled to go and spend their money, but I'm still a big believer as if, well, if you support the clubs, support the club. In regards to obviously anybody, when you're getting stick, or if you're giving the team stick, they're not exactly going to go and play well. Whereas if you support and encourage it, the chances are you obviously do a lot better. So
it's not going to sound like the Falkirk owners.
No, it was certainly a kind of a bad atmosphere around about everything. And then, as I say, Paul Jewell came in, thought as if obviously a change of circumstances there when Billy left, but again, nothing kind of transpired. It was just kind of same old. And then get into the Championship, again, it was still that hangover. Didn't really obviously change much in regards to obviously the difference in the games or whatever else. And Paul Jewell then left, and then kind of, even through that stage, I'd been actually on Plymouth and loan, because I was kind of in the team at that time. I went to the beginning of the Championship season. I went to Barnsley in loan for a month, but over that month, Paul Jewell actually left. And Nigel Clough came in and kind of revived again my career at Derby. It's kind of like go and play, changed kind of like the atmosphere around the club a little bit.
Talk to us about Nigel Clough, because he's a massive name in English football, isn't he?
Yeah, and obviously his dad obviously carries a huge amount of weight, and obviously I think Nigel kind of, I'm not saying clouded by the fact obviously who his dad was, but in his own right, obviously fantastic manager. So he's obviously had reasonable success at most of the clubs that he's actually been at. And for me, very, very good manager, very good man manager, very good in terms of, again, just treating people like adults, just obviously getting on, asking them to do a certain job. You go and do it, but giving them obviously freedom to make sure as if you do your job, you work hard, then I'll just kind of treat you like adults. And say it was, for me, man management was brilliant. Training was brilliant. It was so enjoyable. And again, kind of, as I say, transform my career again from at the beginning of that, when through a sticky patch, not doing so well. But that obviously coincided with the team not doing so well. And then obviously when he came in, kind of built up a good relationship with the fans again and different things like that as well. So yeah, so there was obviously a lot of up and downs and seeing people, football and whatever else. Then you go through these things, but again, it's just got to be strong mentally to keep going through it. So it is, and again, probably look back now, probably fondly my times at Derby. So I do, because obviously the way then things turned out. But yeah, massive disappointment in terms of obviously Premier League, and then obviously playing, I think over the 3 seasons, I think I played over 100 odd games, which is say over the 3.5 seasons, obviously is a good return. So yeah, no, it was good when I look back on it now.
Yep. And then to finish off your career in England, you went to Sheffield Wednesday. You were, your contract expired with Derby.
Yeah.
And then you went on to Sheffield Wednesday. What was the thinking behind that?
Again, I think I was 32 at that point. I think Derby had offered me an extra year, but when you get to 32, you're thinking obviously, a little bit more security. Sheffield Wednesday, yes, they were in League One, but again, looked at the size of the club and the opportunity to hopefully get back up into the Championship. Alan Irvine had just become the manager as well. So again, another Scotsman. So looking obviously there, thinking, everything, hopefully the squad that was building and things, obviously opportunity to try and get back up. So went there, massive club. And again, in terms of obviously the stadium, again, an old school stadium, but I say the atmosphere it was used to create and obviously the attention got, I say, were fantastic. But again, that season probably fell short in terms of obviously what you expected at the beginning of the season. So obviously the way things transpired at the end of the season. But I say personally, done reasonably well. I managed to play, I think it was near enough 50 games in that season when you took in league games and cup games and everything else. So I had a 2-year contract at that time. Wanted obviously to do better. Still had the year left, but then I felt again my daughter was starting school, and the opportunity to come back up to Scotland at that time probably was a little bit more of a pull for me.
Was there a couple of options from Scotland? Obviously, you opted for St Mirren in the end, but what made you go for the Saints?